Crudely Drawn Conclusions with David and Mike. My name's David. We got Mike here. How you doing, Mike?
Like I said, right before we started, this is insanely early, if anybody's interested. And these are probably like the 100th words or so that I've uttered this morning directly from my face into this microphone. But I'm doing well. Coffee's starting to take effect.
It is very early, so your brain's still getting switched on a little bit, huh?
Well, really, I do have a mutant power. As soon as I wake up, within 5 seconds, I'm pretty much fully downloaded for the day. It's all in there. I don't need a wake up period. I don't need a period where I need to get the gears all lubricated. It just kind of starts in an immediate lurch, and I go forward. This is pretty much the best it gets all day.
Good. Well, I'm still riding high off a big Dallas Cowboys win last night, so no need to pull me out of the lurch. I woke up happy and ready to go. So
they had football contests yesterday, did they?
We had a football contest on Monday night, and they pulled off a big win against the Philadelphia Eagles, and so here I am.
Ooh, I'm not going to shit on your victory. That's great. It's good for all involved, and I'm sure there's many people mad and many people happy, and then people will talk shit today, and there'll be memes about how bad the Cowboys still suck and whatnot.
A little bit of news that came out of that game. They decided to do something different with the commentators. They had Peyton Manning and Eli Manning just kind of almost doing like a podcast style commentary. So during the game, they had like LeBron James on, they had Nick Saban, and they're just kind of sitting there having a conversation, not really getting deep into the game and stuff like that. And at one point, Eli Manning, I guess, didn't realize he was on camera and gave the double. He was talking about his experiences in Philadelphia. They're known as like the harshest fans, and he was talking about every time he went to Philadelphia, there'd be like 9-year-old kids yelling "F you," giving him the double bird. And, he actually did the double bird on camera. And so when I pulled up the news this morning, there was mix of outrage and stuff over Eli Manning giving the double bird on the Disney-owned ESPN. So we'll see if that turns into anything.
God, I hope so. What kind of outrage was there? I mean, who was outraged about this? Does not everyone know what this means?
It's got to be fake outrage, right?
Of course. That's good, though. Fake outrage is really the only kind, because outrage is something that, it's a response to something outrageous. But doing a double bird in 2021, not so outrageous. So I I love it, man. That's a good story to start with. We can delve deep into that one.
Exactly. Yeah, we really could. Let's see if there's any outrage, fake, manufactured, or real here. You being you're a Renaissance man. You love art. You love books and music and movies and so on. This story's kind of gone a little under the radar, but Hunter Biden, who is Joe Biden's son, is I guess he does a little bit of art on the side, or maybe that's his passion. I really don't I don't know him that well, but I'm assuming it's his passion. But Hunter Biden is going to be featured in an art gallery in New York that's run by somebody named George Burgess. He's going to have 15 pieces featured, and they're asking anywhere between $75,000 to $500,000 for these pieces.
Oh, wow.
And kind of curious. I don't know if you saw the story, but what are your thoughts on this?
I don't know how. Like I said, I don't know how I missed this particular story. I think I'd heard some kind of jokes on morning radio, as you're driving, doing errands and things, you're going about your life, you hear something in the background about Hunter Biden art, and I just thought, okay, maybe he paints a little bit. But I was not aware that he had a big show going to be opening up in the second capital of the United States, New York City. Now, you said $75,000 to $500,000. Have you seen any of this art?
That's a great question. So we can put this in the show notes, but The Atlantic, who's kind of a left-leaning publication, did a really interesting story about it. But they interviewed an art critic, this guy named Sebastian Smee, who's so he said Biden is comparable to a cafe painter. He said, by that, which I mean the kind of art you see in coffee shops. He was asked a little bit more. He said, it's not bad, but it's not good. And he said it would be alarming if any art at this quality was sold for more than $1,000. So he's, it's pretty obvious. He thinks it's average at best. Probably not something that would bring in $500,000 or even $75,000 or even $2,000.
Right.
But I guess, I'm assuming this will all be sold. All these 15 pieces bring a hefty sum into our good friend Hunter.
Okay, there's a lot of things here. Okay, there's a lot of things here. People may think there's not. They think, oh, okay, of course the guy's going to be cashing in on the success and the fame of his dad. There's that. Okay, now I'm actually looking at his art, which is not terrible. It's pretty damn good, actually. It's not bad. I'd put some of this stuff on my wall. I was actually ready to just completely start shitting on this guy. But he's a pretty good artist. It's not bad. It's good stuff. And let's start with the art critic right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are generally as pretentious as they come. Sometimes they, if you're photorealism, if that's what you're going for, you can pretty much critique that, and you could say, okay, well, his perspective's off, and he's not making good shadows from the sun or the light source, or the angle's wrong, something like that. But when it comes to any other kind of art, what are you critiquing? You're just critiquing whether you like it or not, because this is just shapes and colors, and so there's nothing for you to say, okay, he fucked that up, because there's no fucking it up. Now, is it worth, quote unquote, $75,000 to $500,000? Well, it depends on if you want to buy it or not. I would not spend $75,000 on this, but I've seen art that looks like this, and to my untrained eye, that has sold for millions of dollars. But of course, he is cashing in on his father's success, and I think the bigger point here is everyone knows he's cashing in on his father's success. He knows he's doing the same thing. His father knows it, and yet it's still going to happen because the gallery is still going to make money because these are actually going to be sold, and no one cares. And people care on our level, but people don't care on that level. That's a big. If you're talking about double middle fingers, that's a double middle finger more than Eli Manning could even hope to accomplish, because this is a big fuck you to anybody who thinks that they are actually running something, when this is just to show you that elite people in elite positions can do whatever the fuck they want.
I do think it's interesting he's going to make a ton of money off of this art, and I also find it interesting, and like if a celebrity, whoever it is that you follow, or let's just stay with Eli Manning. Let's say I'm a huge fan of his. He might have a bit of memorabilia that might not be worth that much to most people, but if you're like a mega fan, or even if you like kind of obscure things, like, oh hey, I got a piece of Hunter Biden's art, that's kind of weird, that's kind of cool, it's a little conversation topic, I don't know if it's worth $500,000, but so that's where these art critics are off a little bit too. I mean, my wife runs into this with real estate, where people are willing to pay a ton of money for a house that people might not think that it's worth that much, and they battle it out with appraisers and stuff like that, because people are willing to pay more because of several different factors. But I agree with you. When you talk about what the Trump kids went through, with their companies and making money, and even Trump with his hotels. And I think it's like the emoluments that it's called, where he was still able to, or his organization was still able to make money whenever foreign dignitaries came to Washington D.C. and they would stay at the Trump hotel. And there was a lot of criticism against that. And here, I think there's one congressman that's talking about it. He's reaching out to this gallery owner, trying to figure out, how do we know who's paying this money? Will this stuff be just funneled to Joe Biden or something like that? How can they get a little transparency and stuff like that? So there, apparently these questions are being asked, but it is kind of interesting because in the previous administration, things like this were like 5-alarm fires, and this is just kind of this is barely making any news.
Well, this is Uncle Joe here we're talking about. We know Uncle Joe is not going to do anything below the board. He's an above the board man. He's an honest man. He's been in politics for 50 years. He doesn't really need the money, and that's true. He doesn't need the money. He's the president of the United States of America, and he's 79 years old. So he's not going to need the money, but he knows his son's going to need some cash when he shuffles off this planet. So it's interesting that everybody looks at Hunter Biden as a big fuck up, right? Because he is. But I mean, he's still a millionaire, and he's off of his dad and off of the dealings with China, and he looks like an artist, right? You know, he's been strung on heroin for many years, and I think he had a crack pipe at one point. There was that whole debacle there. Like I said, his art's, it's all subjective, right? This is all subjective. Would you pay this much for this kind of art? Probably not, but we don't have this kind of disposable income. But yeah, if you're going to do it on a goof, and you're like 10 years from now, you're like, you know, this portrait above my toilet, you know who painted that? That's fucking Hunter Biden, dog. That's why you buy these paintings. But you also, the money's not going to Joe Biden. Joe Biden doesn't need $500,000. He's been probably grifting the system for millions of dollars for many years, and money's not even a big deal to him because he has power, and power is much more useful than money could ever be in this instance.
And another thing with this Hunter Biden thing that's gone under the radar. So I find this interesting because these are more left-leaning publications that are coming out with some of this stuff. But Politico, there's a writer for Politico that recently did a little bit of research and is, I guess, coming out with a book soon. Was able to verify a few, not all of them, but a few of those emails in Hunter Biden's laptop. And so apparently they're slowly verifying some of that stuff that right before the election. I think 3 weeks. Yeah, exactly. Well, 3 weeks to a month before the election, and this was just an insane story on so many levels. But his laptop was found. It was at a laptop repair shop where there was this blind laptop repair guy. Somehow it gets in the hands of Rudy Giuliani, gets in the hands of the New York Post, and it was kind of the October surprise before the election. Mm-hmm. And social media started basically censoring anything that was on Twitter, Facebook, and so on about Hunter Biden's laptop. And now, almost a year later, it's starting to be publicized from left-leaning news sources that this is actually probably his laptop, which is so funny to me because all of the and I understand. Actually, I can't really understand it, but at the time they're thinking the Twitter and Facebook's justification for censoring everybody was this is hacked material. This is probably planted by the Russians to interfere with our election. Uh-huh. And then here we are a few months later, and it's like, oh wait, I think it actually is him. These are actually his pictures with random prostitutes and smoking crack and sniffing coke off of rugs and stuff like that, which is kind of funny. That was one thing I read, that his documentation of his sorry, we had a little bit of a connection issue, but one thing that one of these publications talks about, because I've never seen the laptop. You just hear what people that have access to write about it. But apparently Hunter was very good at documenting himself, with pictures and so on, with various prostitutes and so on.
That's a good time. It's a good time.
Yeah. So it's interesting, that now this is being verified. And I don't really care. But at the time, I did think it was interesting that, Facebook and Twitter and so on were just saying that, no, you can't put, if it's about the laptop, you can't put this up. It's Russian material.
It's definitely interesting because it's alarming, and it's an overt stance, and we all just keep using Facebook. I was talking to you on Facebook Messenger before the show because that's how we primarily communicate, because we're guys who are approaching or in middle age, and that's how we communicate, is through Facebook Messenger. So everything we send in Facebook Messenger is recorded and there for posterity. So if we ever need to pull anything up years from now, it's always there. You can go in there and do a search for something you talked about in 2014. And thankfully, your dad Facebook is there to always remind you of what happened in the past and always record it, and it has access to all your photos and all your information. But there are some things Like, that was an article from the New York Post that was talking about, I believe it was the New York Post, one of the oldest papers in the United States of America said that this laptop was Hunter Biden's and it had all this information on it. And Twitter said, no, you can't talk about that. It's too close to the election. That's essentially what it was. We don't want to damage our guy. That's clearly what it was. And it's clearly what it was on Facebook and any other social media platform that's mainstream like that. Because there's a clear agenda. And anytime anyone says there isn't, all you have to do is actually scroll through your feed and see what's deemed offensive or too radical, or, anytime if you say the word COVID, and I'm not going to start talking about COVID, but if you say that in Facebook and you try to share something, it'll automatically ask you, do you really want to share this? It's got COVID in it. Okay, so it's policing you all the time. In this day, when Hunter Biden was clearly doing some shady dealings with China, because what the fuck is Hunter Biden even doing in China, other than the fact that he's the vice president's son? That's the only reason he would have had any access to that. Otherwise, Hunter Biden is a crackhead who's a kind of a failed artist, and he really likes hookers, and he really likes strippers, and he really likes drugs. But no, he's on the board with this big energy company in China because he has access to his father. That's clearly the story. But that just gets suppressed, and it kind of further illustrates how terrible our system is when it comes to electing our leaders. And also the election itself, the campaign that leads up to it, starts 2 years before the actual election. What kind of madness is that? Where we just have these guys constantly parading around. It's this constant circus, and the incumbent has to go through this process the whole time he's actually supposed to be doing the job. It's a ridiculous system. And we all just say, this is a ridiculous system, and then we don't do anything about it. But now we're not going to do anything about it at all. I think we all kind of realize that anything we really want doesn't really matter anymore. Doesn't seem to be any consequences for any politician who doesn't follow the will of the people, because the will of the people can just be manipulated by social media to make them think one thing or the other.
Yeah, I'd like to describe Hunter Biden more as it's a true underdog story, right? He's the guy who shouldn't be an artist, but look, he's given the double bird to everybody and saying, oh, you think my art's only worth $1,000? Watch this. I'm about to be a multimillionaire soon, or again. Yeah. And you don't think I should be on a board in China? Well, watch me. I mean, it's really an inspiration if you think about it. He's somebody with possible, limited IQ abilities. He's had his stumbles along the way. I mean, this is somebody we should be proud of, maybe, or not. I don't know.
I agree with you. He gives hope to all the other kids of former vice presidents and senators, and that they too can, if their father or mother is powerful enough, they too can do pretty much anything they want to do in this world with no repercussions whatsoever.
Exactly. I always love it that no matter who the politician is, they're going to find that bit of his family. He's got to have a brother, a cousin, a family member that's out there who's probably not all switched on, who's had a couple stumbles along the way. They're going to do their exactly. Yeah, somebody who's on some drugs, who's doing some shady stuff like that. They will find that person. But like you said, in the past, these characters like this would really tank a political career for somebody. And what came out in October before the election would have tanked somebody, because it wasn't just, hey, this guy's into strippers and he's into coke and whatever. And no. This guy's got some pretty shady business dealings. This guy's over in China, and he's exactly the emails about, hey, it was great to meet your dad, and thanks for bringing him along, and whatever. But like you said, none of that was allowed to be put out there. But just goes to show you where we're at right now.
And I know we have to move on from this, but one thing I did love, I was reading one of the emails the other day, and the last line in the email really got me, because it was from Hunter Biden to someone in China, and it said at the bottom, "Oh, I apologize for all the typos. Can't see shit." I love he's an artist. He's fuck the rules, fuck the all the fuck grammar. I can't see shit, dog. I love that.
It's the true underdog story. We got to give more praise to this guy. He's really turned what he's been given in life and really made the most of it. So I'm definitely proud of the guy.
Yeah, I am as well.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe we can reach out to him and talk to him about this situation on the border. So, yeah. Exactly. I definitely wanted to talk to you about. So we haven't recorded since this story really came out. There was a surge at the border in Del Rio, Texas. That this story had an insane life cycle from. I think it was like a week long, or maybe less than a week, where there was a surge at the border, and there was a lot that kind of happened there, and there was basically this camp of thousands of immigrants that had crossed the border over in Del Rio, and got outraged from really both sides. Number one, just the amount of people that kind of surged at the border, and then what really turned into a huge story was there was some migrants that were walking across the river. They had Border Patrol there, and I think there was like 4 or 5 Border Patrol agents that were on horseback, and there was a picture that went viral of a Border Patrol agent on a horse that was, holding the reins of, it was later turned, people reins, thought it was a whip. Yeah. So he was holding reins, and it was immediately put out. Or, people saw the picture, and it sort of got weird really fast, where people thought that this Border Patrol agent was whipping these Haitian immigrants. And this thing went crazy. Next thing you know, there was big protests at the border and so on. But, there's just so much to talk about with this one. Crazy story, but what's your, I guess, initial thoughts on this whole thing?
I guess initially, I just, apparently those guys had been down in South America, maybe not South America, maybe Central America for quite some time, and then they got word that it was pretty easy to cross the border, and I guess they started walking. I don't know. I haven't seen anything on the news about it, but they just kind of materialized at the border. I haven't done a whole lot of research on how they got there. Who really gives a shit, right? Because we should have just let them in immediately. But 13,000 or 15,000, the number kept going up and up as I watched the story. I guess more people were arriving under this overpass, under this bridge in Del Rio, Texas. And they were all in this little camp, and then, they had hopes and dreams. And the story just kind of illustrated the fact that because the end part, I'm going to skip ahead to the end part, and then I'll kind of go back on that, because the end part, they all just disappeared. Whoa, they were all there yesterday. Now 15,000 motherfuckers are no longer there. What happened? Well, the federal government swooped in and spirited them away. Whether they sent them back to Haiti or put them in camps or maybe drowned them in the ocean. Who knows, really, because they can just do whatever they want without telling us, and we won't care anyway because we'll just protest about things, and then the news cycle will move on. But in this instance, they just disappeared. Now you scroll back a little bit on that. You go back and you think people are outraged that people are trying to do their jobs and control the border because they are Border Patrol. They're supposed to prevent these people from invading your country. That's what Border Patrol is supposed to do. That's why you have a border. So you say, this is my country, and this is a different country. And meanwhile, we forget that they came from Mexico, and they're not Mexican. So Mexicans are just laughing at us. They're just laughing as 15,000 Haitians just walk through their country to get to our country. And then we meet them on horseback, like it's 1850, because horses are pretty good at, moving faster than humans, and they're strong and they're big and they're kind of scary if they jump in your face if you've never been in front of a horse that reared up. And then people see it on the news, like, wow, this is Maxine Waters got me. I love Maxine Waters. Anytime Maxine Waters says anything about any subject, I'm there. I'm clued in. I'm ready to listen and learn. Because when she got on there and she literally said, this is worse than slavery. I had to let that one marinate for a minute. She didn't have all the facts. All she had was a couple of images, and she doesn't understand how horses work and how reins work and how people work, but it was just another way to swoop in and give the hot take on that without any kind of research.
Yeah.
That's my initial.
Exactly. And I'm always fascinated by things that go viral because, people can try to go viral. I'm going to make a viral TikTok video and you're going to get 40 views and it's going to tank. But this picture went viral and it went viral so fast. And, if you really just break it down to what happened, I was able to see it like a full video and, some more pictures and so on. But at one point, these guys that were walking through the river actually started like running, like they were trying to run past the horses. And I've seen a couple articles and some politicians and stuff like, why are we using horses down there? Like, could you okay, so if you're on a 4-wheeler, if you're on a 3-wheeler, you can change direction pretty quickly, but not as quickly as a horse can. It's amazing. You're out there in the woods. You might have a horse or a donkey or something like that. I don't know. I don't have one. I've only been on a horse maybe 2 or 3 times in my whole life, but I will say the change of direction in those animals is amazing. And with people trying to run past them, they actually couldn't do it because, they were changing direction so quickly. So, that's really what it comes down to. But it really shows you can manipulate a lot of people through a picture. And what's really fascinating about this story to me, and there's been other stories like this, because I think like social media, that's one that has the right upset. They're really mad about censorship and all that stuff. And the left is really mad about not enough censorship. So both people are mad or both sides are mad. And you think, oh man, both sides are really fired up about social media, but they're upset about 2 different things. This was the exact same thing. The right's been upset about the surge at the border and the lack of policies that do anything, and where's the VP who's in charge of this and all that stuff. And then this was the first time you really saw any politicians from the left caring about or saying anything about what's going on at the border. And just to go on just a little bit more, you mentioned that they all disappeared and where are they now and all that stuff. So I know a few, they had a few planes that went down that took people back to Haiti. And they've had a few, I forgot what the number is, but Houston has been, there's been a few facilities in the north side of Houston that have been processing some of this overflow of Haitian migrants. And one of the Congress people, Sheila Jackson Lee, who's, she tends to do this. I'm not going to call it like ambulance chasing or whatever, but kind of where there's, anytime where, she can get on camera and kind of piggyback onto a story. So she showed up and kind of said similar to what Maxine Waters did, but nobody's really talking about solutions. Nobody's really talking about anything like that. It's just this outrage. And then, like you said, the news cycle will move on and no one is going to seem to care about this in a week or two, or maybe nobody cares about it anymore.
No, I don't think anybody really cares about it now. It's kind of moved on. We're on to the next story. And they're swooping in to make their moment in the sun, to get on camera and make a little press, because it's really about them. It's all about the ego. And if they say differently, they're lying to you. That's what most people become politicians for, because they believe that they know better than the rest of us. That's kind of intrinsically what a politician believes. They think that they have the skills and the abilities that other people don't possess, and perhaps they do. And then they get into the office, and it's just about being famous and being powerful for most of them. And then they occasionally make some bullshit law that goes into the books that you have to follow for the rest of your life, and then your grandchildren have to pay excess amounts of taxes or something like that. That's kind of what politicians are good for, is just making all these rules that no one wants or no one needs. So when you look at what's happening down there and what did happen down there, do you think it just stopped when the Haitians left? Do you think that no more have come since then? No, of course, that's a rhetorical thing to say, because I think they were having 6,700 apprehensions a day at the border every day of the year. So I'm not really great at math, but that's more than a fuck ton of people in a month, probably, coming through constantly, just being apprehended. And how many people actually get through? So we don't have a border. We have the semblance of a border. We have the idea of a border, but we don't have a border. And it just these Haitians kind of illustrate the fact that anybody can come into Central America. Anybody can come into Mexico. And then if they have the willpower, They just walk north or get brought north, probably bussed up there by the Mexicans and people, it's not derogatory to Mexicans to call them Mexicans, by the way. I've actually had that conversation. They are Mexican. So the Mexican authorities just bust them up north and drop them off, and then they get out, and they're waiting at the border. They come through the border. And how many thousands of people per day come through the border and then just disappear into the United States of America and then end up getting driver's license in California and making a great life for themselves? So that's great. To say that we have a border is a fallacy. We don't. We haven't had one in many years because of the policies. You see how easily we just got rid of that situation? Overnight, that was cleared out because the federal government has a lot of made-up money and a lot of real power. So we could take care of this situation anytime we want. But we don't want to for whatever reason. And people who are listening to this podcast, they may have their own proclivities or their own ideas about what those reasons may be. But at the end of the day, the end result is still the same. It's a porous border, and if any other country in the world had a border like this that was a developed Western nation, the citizens would riot in the street. But there's always too much to riot about. There's always something to get angry about and get outraged about. And this is a great illustration, and I can't wait for the cycle to dip down and then come back up again, because at the beginning when Biden took office, the border was a big deal because Pence and Trump were fucking it up. And now I guess it's fine if Biden fucks it up, because obviously it's not really Biden. It's everybody who's controlling the actual regime.
And, to me, this is, for really patriotic Americans, I mean, this is really just a story of that. Like, it's funny how a lot of, I hate to always be, talking about the politicians, but just a lot of people really criticize America. They criticize the country and so on, but you have people that are willing to fly to Colombia and walk through all of Central America, a journey that could take months to years, with their stops along the way, with nothing more in their hands other than, you saw these guys with just to-go, just like a plastic bag. They're willing to walk this entire way to just get a shot at what we got over here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people will criticize everything about I'm not a big rah-rah guy either. I have my criticisms, obviously. We talk a lot about the country, but if there's anything that shows you what we still got here, obviously, they're able to come over here with limited skill. Some of them probably maybe have a lot of skill, but they're in a country with no opportunity at all. They're starving. Their president was recently. Their president was recently assassinated. They have just political turmoil. They're constantly being hit by either earthquakes or hurricanes, and those people are basically saying, you know what? Nah, I'm gonna take what I can and just see what I can make happen over there. Some of them will come over here and they won't live. I mean, some of them might come over here and start playing baseball and just start kicking ass. I mean, there's a lot of Cubans and Haitians maybe not a lot of Haitians that really make some waves in the Major League Baseball scene, but Cubans are pretty dominant at that. But yeah, you could come over here and there maybe a few will do great, but some of them will come over here and do okay, but that's way better than what they got. Like, yeah. And I know. Let me just make one more point real quick. So I've met a guy over the last few years who journeyed over here from, I believe, El Salvador. He's got a family back in El Salvador. He illegally crossed the border, and he's living here. And at some point, we had some electrical work that we hired somebody who had this guy as part of his team. Now, he's over here. He's illegally here, but he seems to work and pick up work through different electrical companies and so on somehow. So he's got a family. He's got kids and stuff back home. And he has chosen to be away from his family for basically the rest of his life. And he's not over here doing anything, he doesn't have like a great job or anything like that, but he's willing to work harder than a lot of Americans here. You know what I mean? And yeah. The amount of money he makes, he just sends it off back home to El Salvador, and his family down there seems to be doing way better than if they had a job down there. So anyway, it's I know I've kind of droned on and on, but Curious in your thoughts on that.
Well, those Haitians were willing to live under a bridge in Del Rio, Texas, because it was better than the place they came from. Because Haiti sucks.
Yeah.
Right? There's constant
Yeah.
hurricanes and earthquakes, and then just riots in the streets and no real infrastructure, and then the president was assassinated. Can we say that perhaps it is a shithole because of all these environmental problems and all these people problems, managing themselves and doing a poor job of it, and just poverty and poverty and poverty. It's terrible. Most of the world is impoverished, I would say, compared to the United States of America. We can afford to let in some immigrants legally. I would say that we let in quite a few illegally every year, and then we have the constant stream of illegal ones that come through. And just for that very reason, right? Because they work hard, they get here, and then employers will hire them illegally because for one thing, they're cheaper, and it's kind of it's a win-win for the employer. He doesn't have to report all the taxes. He doesn't have to report that they're even employed, right? He just pays them under the table, and then they send that money out of the country away from the United States to be traded for goods and services in their own home country. So yes, on an altruistic kind of pie in the sky world, and I'm half that anyway. They come over here and we want them to have a better life. I want a person to have a better life. They're trying. They're doing what I would do. I would like to think if I was in an impoverished nation trying to feed and protect my family. But at what point, is there a point where you come to it where you say, they're illegal and there are legal ways to get here, and it sucks that they're there and I'm here? Is there a breakover point where you get so many people here who aren't from this culture, who aren't from this place, that change the culture, that change the ability of the nation? But I don't think we're going to have to worry about that because we're kind of doing a good job of fucking it up ourselves with the ridiculous inflation rates. And that's end of empire problems. That's not like third world problems, because the end of empire problems are great for the third world by comparison. They get here and we're bitching about inflation and bitching about spending all this imaginary money on foreign wars. They don't give a shit. There's job openings everywhere, and there's people willing to pay them less money, so there's always a job to be had. So it's depending on which way you want to look at it, I don't think it really matters that much if they keep pouring in over the border. But it's been open for so long now that we've kind of changed the fabric of the country anyway, and we've developed our own problems, our own kind of cesspool in Washington, D.C. that's filtered out across the states. And these last 18 months have really kind of kept hammering the nails down further into our coffin of our own making. Hate to put it like that, but it's not looking great.
Yeah. It's I think you're right. I mean, if I was living in one of those situations, I'd probably get on a plane and say, you know what, I'm gonna see what I can do. And you talk about legal ways to become a citizen and to come over here. And you look at just the last few months, and that's been expedited with, the Afghanistan migrants that we had to pull out of there, the people that helped us over there, and now I think they're trying to, make space for some of these the Haitian immigrants. But I don't know. It's kind of interesting too, where we spend money as a nation. I mean, Biden was in front of the UN about a week ago talking about how he's going to work with Congress to spend, I think it was like $100 billion for other countries, for us to pay other countries to become more advanced to combat climate change. What does that mean? I don't really know. We seem to spend a lot of money in the Middle East, in other countries, but I'm not saying we need to fund what goes on in Haiti, but they are at our doorstep, right? They're super close to us. Should we care more about them than Afghanistan and some of these other countries that aren't? And we probably don't even have. And we've talked about this before too. Do we really need to be spending all this money with other countries anyway? And that's why I've almost changed my stance on, when people talk about health care and can we have health care reform and all that stuff, and politicians are like, yeah, well, it's going to cost a lot of money. Well, I don't know. We spend a whole lot of money elsewhere. If we actually kept it here, maybe we could have a really cool healthcare system where it works for everybody. You know what I mean? It's just this weird debate all the time about where we spend our money. Like, could we send a couple shekels down to Haiti and help them out versus helping, some country that nobody even knows exists, and here they are, super close to us.
We don't have any money. It's all made up money. We're always in constant debt. We're going to be over $1 trillion. This just for the original budget for the year. We're going to be over $1 trillion in the red, just on that initial spending. And after that, who knows how many trillions of dollars we're going to have to be borrowing from the Federal Reserve. We don't have any money. And the reason we don't have any money is because we've been spending it on all these insane social programs and defense for the last 70 years. And then we give away a lot. The other day there was a story about Congress. Some people were a little upset about giving $1 billion to help fund the Iron Dome there in Israel. And people on the right were saying we have to fund in Israel because they are our place. They're our ally in the Middle East. And then people on the left were saying, well, they're just oppressors of the Palestinians. And I'm somewhere in the middle saying, why do we have to give $1 billion to Israel? Does Israel not have $1 billion that they can buy, that they can spend to take care of their own goddamn Iron Dome? They don't have $1 billion fucking dollars. $1 billion is nothing these days. I mean, to me, it'd be enough money to live for infinity. But for a nation not to have $1 billion, that's absurd. That's insane. So it's clearly about showing the rest of the Middle East that we are backing Israel by giving them that money that we don't have, that our great-great-great-grandchildren would have to pay back if there's still a country. People think I'm being nuts here when I say that if there's still a country, because we are fucking this up. We've had so much excess and so much success for so long that we don't really know how the world works, where the rest of the world is still fighting and striving to get stronger and to get better. We've been sitting here, now we're arguing about, we're infighting so much about Hunter Biden paintings and funding $1 billion to Israel and climate change. We think we're going to make the people around the world really give a shit about climate change when they're just trying to heat their homes and trying to get food and water and wealth. We're giving Zaire, I don't even think that's a country anymore, Democratic Republic of Congo, how many billions of dollars to worry about climate change? Those people aren't going to worry about climate change. They're going to pocket the money or use the money for what they need. It's absurd. It's ridiculous, and it's just done that way so that we look a certain way to the people for the political party that's in power right now.
It is kind of sad, the infighting and we're just, it's this side versus this side all the time. And I don't know, call me crazy, but it almost seems like that's by design. It's divide and conquer. They get two sides really fired up about something, and then somebody benefits off of that. You see it with abortion, you see it with immigration. It's these issues that really seem to never really move the ball down the field. They never really seemed. There's no solution or anything like that. I mean, I think most Americans are. We care about people. I think most people care about immigrants, but I think there's also, like you've talked about, there's also kind of a middle ground. Is there a rule? Do we have a rule here? Like, is there how many immigrants will we take in per year, and are we going to stick to that? Are we going to secure the border? You know what I mean? These are questions, and they seem pretty simple. Can a border be secured? That process was going on. Can we evaluate, does this wall work or not? Do we need to negotiate with Central America? Do we need to negotiate with Mexico to have a policy? But it's like we put a policy in place, we blow it up, we infight, we point fingers at each other, we have art shows for Hunter Biden. We just have a good time over here. And the Cowboys won yesterday, so I'm happy. Right?
I'm happy for you, man. That's all that really matters. We're just trying to make it through our existence. Just have a little pleasure, a little joy along the way. I mean, we're talking about this now, but what are we going to change? We're talking about it. And people have been talking about it. You can see talking heads on TV talk about it as well. But we're not going to actually change anything because the system's too entrenched. The system is the system. The people in power are there because they like power. And they're not going anywhere. And the Democrats and Republicans are famously two different sides of the same coin. That's why they hated Trump so much, because he wasn't on that coin. He was an asshole douchebag, but he wasn't he wasn't part of their team. That's why they hated him so much. That's why they impeached him twice. Go ahead.
Let me just dig down into something you said. You said, if we have a country anymore. Now, I know, you kind of elaborated a little bit more, but obviously that I feel like that would take a while to implode. But do you really see that as something that could happen? Just the implosion, the civil war potential. I mean, like, is that just
maybe
kind
not
of
civil war? But maybe definitely succeeding.
You see it as like a financial thing.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's a complicated thing.
You spend all the money, inflation, and so on, and then it just kind of spirals out of control.
Yeah, and this is a long topic, but essentially on the surface of it, I think social media and media in general has amplified the fact that we have never been one country. We've been a place of regions. We were one country maybe in World War II because we all had to pull together for some dire need. But since that time, maybe for a little time after World War II, we were all one country. But then now, in the last 10 to 12 years, with all the social media around the world, you get to constantly see, and not just social media, also media, 24-hour news cycles that are constantly on, showing you how people in Portland act. And I'm in Louisiana, and I look at that and I'm like, that's not anything like me. And then they look at me in Louisiana and say, that's not anything like me, and vice versa, on and on and on, because these different regions have always been separate and have always been different and have always had different values because it's culture. It's not about the country. It's about the culture that you live in. You could say the overriding country or culture has been one of red, white, and blue. But now if you put that on TV, half the country boos the flag. It's been broken down over the last decade for sure. They will kneel. They will boo. There is no overriding symbol or overriding thing that ties everyone together because it's been systematically destroyed over the last 10 years. And whether that's been on purpose or whether that's been a byproduct of the actions of the people with their freedom and with their ability to express their ideas across millions or thousands and thousands of miles and regions, either way, the fabric of the nation has been broken by these acts. And then it's just illustrated every day when somebody in, say, Washington, it's the seat of the power of the country, which is supposed to be very limited, which hasn't been limited for quite some time, but we were all fine with that when it benefited us, when we had a fairly good life, when we were living the American dream such as it was. But now that we see that the American dream doesn't really exist as it did anymore, it exists the people who don't know it, who are from outside of the country, who are striving to actually have food and water and shelter. We're so fucking spoiled that we turned on ourselves and we broke ourselves apart, and all the idols that we put up to the country, all of our heroes, the Washingtons that we say was a slave owner, and Lincoln, he didn't really free the slaves. He didn't give a shit about the slaves. And the police who were supposed to protect us. Oh no, they killed black people, even though it was only like 11 or 12, and they killed a lot more white people. But anyway, we tear all these systems down. And then what's left? You're left with Connecticut versus Oklahoma. And that shit don't fly.
Yeah. Do you think, and I'm not trying to sound bad here, but do you think the people that hate this country or that, really try to tear these things down, do you think they would maybe become, I don't know, like a pen pal with somebody over in Haiti and say, hey, you seem to really like our country. I seem to really hate it. You think they'd voluntarily just switch places? Because if you think about it in a sports context, that's how I always think of things. I'm a GM and I want the best people here. That guy over in Haiti, he's a hard worker. He wants to be here. We got somebody over here that doesn't. Mm-hmm. You think, we just swap them out. Now we got somebody who's... Yeah. You've talked about, you went to some sort of feed store not long ago. You encountered some of the worst employees you've ever seen in your whole life, people that don't want to work, people that are just on their phone the whole time.
Sure.
I guarantee you, we got some folks over in Central America, Haiti, Cuba, so on, who would come over here and probably work kind of hard.
Yeah,
why not just make a couple... Okay, yeah, that's right. Okay, I see where you're going here. And then, okay, yeah. It's kind of interesting. how that works. But
but it's good.
of the story
I like it.
yeah, exactly. Moral of the story for me, I don't know. Seeing all that's always kind of a reminder for me. I remember when I was a kid, I've said it before, my mom's Brazilian. When I was a kid, we would go to Brazil and we would see true poverty. And, very young, elementary school age, walking the streets there, people living on the sidewalk, and even middle class there meant no AC, no TV, people sleeping in hammocks, very small quarters, and that's middle class. If there really wasn't a middle class there, but the family my mom has down there, and they're still like that. A lot of them still don't have AC. I remember when I went down there like 10 years ago. I'm trying to think the last. No, it was a little bit before or a little bit after that, where oppressing heat in the summer, and we're in this really small house with like a lot of people. Just like, man, I'd love some AC right now. But
yeah,
exactly. And, so these people that really hate this country and really, want to tear down institutions and so on, they would never do this, but maybe go down to Central America, go take a little trip to El Salvador, walk around. And I think maybe you wouldn't hate this place as much. And maybe you try to make it a little bit better versus tearing it down.
Yeah, you'd think so, but I think they would actually have to live it, because otherwise it'd be just a nice little jaunt. They'd fly down there and see what it's really like to be an authentic human, living in poverty and sweat. Sure, there's no money and there's no AC, but there's a great tenor underneath it all that the people really love each other and really express, and they're really part of nature. Now they need to live it for a little while and know what it's like to wake up in the morning with your ball stuck to your leg and fucking mosquitoes all over your face. That's what they need. But they don't have that because they've grown up in the most luxurious country that has ever existed in the history of mankind. They have no idea what it's like to, and especially most of them came from the upper crust part of that. So they've lived beyond the pale, beyond what anyone has ever experienced in the history of the world. Yes, there are many cultures that came along before us that were opulent and wealthy, and there were isolated instances within those cultures where it was probably just as opulent as it is these days, minus the AC. But otherwise, a guy that grew up in 1970s America and lived in New Hampshire was living better than the pharaohs that were controlling Egypt. Just living a regular middle class life because of the modern technology and the geographic location and the wealth. So yeah, we have no idea what it's like to really struggle, and now I hope we don't have to find out. But it's not looking great for me. And people think I used to be the guy that would say you're crazy if you think that this is actually going to all crumble and fall apart. Well, I think I've illustrated it somewhat in the last 5 or 6 minutes of how things have been falling apart, just because of the natural progression from sharing information. Genesis wasn't completely wrong, and it says, don't eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge.
Yeah. Well, just one last bit. While we're talking about Haiti, if anybody hasn't done it, a few years ago I did look into the history of Haiti. It's pretty, I don't know, I always found it really interesting. I think they were the first, kind of nation to really revolt against. It became kind of a little war, the slaves versus the slave owners, and they pretty much kicked France's ass and became independent. I think in like the early 1800s. Pretty cool story, pretty bloody and all that stuff. And no, I don't know, man. It's super complicated, or not. Maybe it's not complicated at all. That when it comes to immigration, when it comes to people having perspective over here, and you're right. We are living in luxury. I've lived with central AC my entire life. That's some luxury. We worked with some guys when we were working in Mexico who didn't have that. Maybe they had
I didn't have that.
A wall unit. Yeah, exactly. And I remember sometimes those guys would come to the rig, and that was, dude, they got to eat whenever they wanted.
Yeah.
They were living the life. They loved going offshore, and we, just
why do we always end these on a dark note? We're doing all nice stories next time.
Yeah. We'll definitely do that. Yeah. I mean, I can talk more about the Cowboys winning if you want. I don't know if that'll help.
On next podcast, let's just do Cowboys winning for an hour and 14 minutes.
Eli Manning shooting the double bird, Cowboys winning. I mean, those are fun.
Amusing
and that's the
stories.
great. People wonder why I like sports, but I've always liked sports because it's just kind of, we've talked about Hunter Biden. You can't judge if this art is good or not. Sports, you got a winner, you got a loser. The winner wins the championship. There's not a whole lot of debate there,
Yeah. I don't know.
But yeah,
I'm just saying, like with sports, like with football, to me, it's just boring. It's just a boring game. I don't know. I know there's lots of people around the world would just be screaming at me. How could you think that's boring? I don't know. It's hike ball, throw ball, smash. Hike ball. It's fucking over and over again. Anyway, I don't get it. I get it, but I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, you're a Renaissance man. You're a man of art and philosophy,
taste and literature.
Exactly. And if you get a chance, just to put a bow on all this, I'd love to see you go up to the Hunter Biden gallery, check it out, give us your take on it. Be just like that art critic did in The Atlantic. I'd love to see it.
Is that going to be in New York?
It's in New York. Just a quick flight up there, and pop into the gallery, show them your vaccination card, because I think you need to be checked before you go into place. I'm not sure. We can talk about that on another day.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to be allowed into the city. I'll probably be shot on sight.
Oh, I hope not. Yeah. Well, this has been fun, man. You got anything else to add before we finish her up?
Yeah, we could talk for another 7 hours on Hunter Biden art, but I guess we need to get out of here and get to work, make some progress, participate in capitalism.
Got to do it. Well, it's been fun, man. Thanks. It's been early morning. I'm, getting jacked up on coffee over here, but it's what we've had to do. Early morning, late night, but I appreciate you joining. And I appreciate everybody listening. If you can, follow us on social media. If you're not, send us an email, comments,
on
whatever.
YouTube.
Yeah, we're on YouTube now. And maybe leave us a comment or a rating. I know we never talk about that stuff, but if you're still sticking around listening right now, maybe rate us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever. But we do appreciate everybody listening, so thank you for that, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Later.
No top hits, neighbors think it's obnoxious. I'm sorry, Mrs. Anderson, but damn, you gon' have to wait until the drop hits. I forgot to take my vitamins.